All right, folks. Well, I think we're going to get started. I hope you enjoyed swimming up the stream to get here to the room. Last one in the aisle. It was quite the crowd, so we wanted to give a few extra minutes for everybody to make it here. Very, very happy with the turnout. Thank you all for coming. We've got a great afternoon planned for you here with this session. I have to tell you, it's probably the most exciting session that I've ever done here at Salesforce, and I've been to actually every Dreamforce now, and I've done a number of sessions throughout the year. Hands down, I've got some exciting technology today. I think you all are absolutely going to love it. So to get started here, how many of you are using a managed package today? Raise your hand. Managed package. Oh, this is good. This is good. Okay, good. We got that part done. How many of you maybe don't know what a managed package is, but are either building right now or have built a commercial application on Salesforce, or maybe you're intending to build? So we got a few people there, new people, kind of learning about this. That's great. Finally, I want to know, and then I guess the rest of you here, you're here just to see me, probably more than anything else, because you didn't raise your hand the first two times. Very happy. Oh, there's one right there. Thank you. Very, very happy to have all of you here as well. Well, we've got a very exciting hour planned. It's very, very technical talk. I'm going to try to slow down, make sure everybody's catching on to what we're discussing today. We're going to talk a little bit about Apex code, Visualforce, but our core focus is managed packages and commercial applications on the platform. So very, very exciting stuff. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Andrew Smith. I am the product manager at Salesforce.com for our commercial application technology, so packaging, what most of you probably know, as my area of specialties, so we've got a lot of neat things to discuss in there. The next slide, absolutely my most favorite slide that we have here, and actually very excited to show you this today, because I'm going to show you unreleased things. I'm going to show you forward-looking technology today. I'm going to show you just some really, really cool stuff that you've never seen, and the stuff that we've spent literally the last 18 months working on to give you an idea of how big it is. Very, very exciting. We're going to do that at the very end. I hope all of you stick around. Now, one of the things I noticed this morning with Mark's keynote is he got up and he said, how many people understand everything that's on this slide, right? And there were some hands, but there were a lot of people who didn't. Well, I wanted to kind of put into context today, in this particular session, what we're going to be talking about. If you notice the items that I've highlighted in red, we're going to be talking a little bit about Apex code, which I'm sure many of you have written. We're going to talk about Visualforce and our workflow and our approvals. And of course, we're here for commercial applications, so we can't leave out the App Exchange. Very, very important. Now, to set the stage, I'm going to need a few volunteers, okay? So I want a couple folks. Anybody volunteering? All right, so I need probably maybe 3 of you. So you. Okay, so come on up. We're going to show a little demonstration today to kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about for the next hour. So come on up stage. Now, what's your name?
Paul Ruffalo.
Paul. Let's see if we have this on, Paul. Paul, we do have this on. So this is Paul. Paul, what company are you with?
Ruffalo Cody.
Ruffalo Cody, okay.
Jay.
Jay, and what company are you with?
360 Entes.
360, okay. And?
Paul.
Another Paul.
With
Shade Tree Technologies. Okay. So we're kind of a little short on space on the stage today, but we're going to kind of spread out. So I want to put the two of you together, kind of go stand just about right there, okay, if you will. And I want you, my friend, to stand right here. Now, you guys know each other. Well, maybe you don't, but now you do, okay? So you guys, I want you to think of these two individuals as being part of the same application, or the same package, for those of you who have done that. Now, our friend over here, he's not part of the same application. He's outside of the bubble. He knows about you guys, but he doesn't really understand everything that's going on with you, okay? He's out here on the outside of this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a message, okay? I'm going to give you a secret message, and I'm going to want you to kind of pass it down the line to our friend on the end here. He's going to read the message, okay? And we're going to go from there. So here's your secret message. All right? I'm going to run down to the other end. And why don't you go ahead and hand that message down? Okay? What does that message say?
I want a bottle of water.
He wants a bottle of water. It's a hot day here. I don't know if you all have tried to find water. Water's a premium at this place. Luckily, I have a bottle of water. All right? So now what I'm going to do, though, is you know about water, and you know about water, right? We are all kind of discussing the same thing here. I'm going to give you this bottle of water. I want you to take that bottle of water. Can everybody still hear me? Okay, good. I want you to take that bottle of water, and I want you to go ahead and hand it to him. I want you to start to hand it to him. Oh, no, wait. Hold on. Something just happened here. Okay? These two guys, like I said, are part of the same application, right? Guess what? They just got upgraded. What a novel been with me since 7:30 this morning. It's been in my backpack. It has bounced around all over Moscone, up and down the stairs, on the bus. Okay, I'm going to get my grip on this. So I'm going to give you the Diet Coke. And why don't you want to get in, right? Because he wanted something to drink. He wanted a bottle of water. So we're going to hand it back to him. Now, you know, you open that drink, right? Oh! Well, our friend here on the end, right? He expected water. He asked for water. That's what he wanted back. But because of the upgrade, he didn't actually get it.
Recorded. I need you to actually. Is this one working?
So, you've got the Diet Coke here. My point with this, though, is, right, the Diet Coke, he didn't expect Diet Coke. If he opened this right now, the Diet Coke would blow up on him all over the place. He wanted water. That's what he expected. Well, if you think about this, this is a common metaphor for what we experience in developing applications, right? Somebody on the outside, a customer, talks to our application, asks us for some information, or in this case, water, right? And they expect water back. But upgrades constantly make this a challenge, and they can easily break people or impact them who expect something and they get back something different. And that's really the core of our discussion today. Now, for the three of you, I've got a trivia question here. We have some parting gifts, okay? I want to know, without going over, how many apps are available on the App Exchange? What's your guess?
20,000.
20,000. 15,000. 2,000. Joel went over. The magic number is 856. I'm going to say you're the closest as you all went over. So you get your choice. We've got some parting gifts for you here. You can pick between, we have some course.com fleeces. We have, looks like Okay, I'm on Anna. There we go. Thank you very much for coming. You guys can pick from among these remaining items, please. Thank you guys for giving me a round of applause. Oh, thank you. I need my message for later. All right. Well, that's really what we're going to talk about today. That's the core piece of our discussion.
Two. Check 1, 2, 2, 2.
Remember, I told you I'm going to show you some things that are unreleased. That's at the very end here. Finally, we'll close it off with a Q&A. So, I love this slide. Mark's done this probably now at almost every single Dreamforce, and he talks about how many releases has Salesforce.com done. Well, we've been around 30 major releases. And for the most part, they are seamless. They upgrade, your customizations just work after the release. It's a very, very seamless process. Now, I think what I want to stress to you today is that does not happen just on accident. It takes countless thought and hours by our engineers to make that a success. And why is that? Well, let's talk about, go back between the traditional software delivery models, right? If you get any of these systems, you try to upgrade them. If you try to upgrade them, that's the key point, right? It takes you forever. It takes 6 months, a year, 2 years. These things are planned forever, and people avoid it. And what I want to show you here is if you try these out, you'll upgrade the development environment, right? Your customization will break. I talked to a guy yesterday who is a Microsoft Dynamics implementer, and I asked him this very question. I said, what is it like rolling out new versions of Dynamics for your customers? I said, is there customization for it? He said, absolutely. I have to go in. That's why I make my bread and butter. I go in every day and write your customization on every version. That's it, right? This is a real true story. And then they'll move it to a test environment, right? And they'll figure out that the UI changed overnight. And they'll go, oh my gosh, my documentation is all out of whack. I have to go update everything. It's a painful, painful process. We put it on staging, same story all over again. You got an integration with a back office system, it is going to break. And then you have to refactor that. And you start this whole process over and over and over again. That's why companies don't upgrade software without some reason. It just doesn't happen. And you know what? The vendors take advantage of this, right? They know that they're going to computing works. And I think most of you have been around Salesforce for a while. You understand this. Salesforce, and all of you, we must take on that burden. It's a different mindset. It's a different community. It's a value that we're adding to the customer, right? Because when Salesforce gets upgraded, or Google, or Facebook, or Twitter, or any of these other SaaS companies, everything still works. Customization for Salesforce works. Integrations don't break. UI stays the same until the administrator changes something, right? These are things that we have to think about. These don't happen just on accident. It takes work. And I would say at Salesforce, it's something that doesn't stop with the product manager or the quality assurance engineer. It is ingrained in the whole R&D organization. I sum it up in probably 4 quick questions that we always ask. And we ask these questions anytime we build a new feature, anytime we can fix a bug, believe it or not. We run through the same list of questions. And we say, do I need to version this change? Is this some kind of a change that's going to break somebody's integration, right? Very, very important. If you've got an integration running, Salesforce rolls out a new update immediately to your production environment, it should still work. That's the key to cloud computing. So our engineers ask the same question every time we do it again. They also run through questions like, is the UI going to change? Is that going to impact end users? And there's some balance and threshold that we've learned over the years. We've learned that we can change a few things on the admins, but end users, we never change anything to them. It's very, very crucial. The other thing is the customizations. If you notice, you get release after release of Salesforce, and your customizations are automatically upgraded, right? That doesn't happen on accident. That takes hours of thought and work on our part to make that happen. And that's what I want to stress to you today. If you want to be a trusted cloud provider, these are the same kind of challenges, the same thought and care that you should put into your own products as you put into ours. It's something that we want to develop as a community atop the Force.com platform. Now, the good news for all of you is that we've spent the last 10 years learning these lessons, some of them the hard way along the way, and we've had to invent processes internally to make it all happen. Well, if you are a partner developing atop the Force.com platform, the great news for you is that we have done some of this work for you. Some of this work happens just on the fact that you're developing on the platform. We take care of it. That's the beauty of it. And so we're kind of going to break this out into 2 areas today. First is, and if you take nothing else away from this presentation, I want you to take away the importance of versioning your API. And you may say, what is your API? The Force.com platform is pretty rich with a lot of functionality in it. And I kind of bucket it into 3 areas. First is your Apex code. How many of you have written Apex code? Look at that. See, every one of you almost in this room has written some sort of an Apex code. Well, if you expose that code at all to your customer can integrate with your code, then that's something that needs to be versioned. You need to worry about we add new things to that code. We're going to walk through a demonstration of that. Now, the one that you have to help us out a little bit on is behavior changes, right? We can't detect kind of what you're doing inside your code. We know about what it looks like, but we don't know exactly what you're doing and what your intention is. We've given you some great tools to actually version behavior. And we'll talk about and through a specific example we're going to walk through of what that actually means. And then finally, deprecation. Many of you have been asking for this. So now you can deprecate Apex. So if you say, put out a global identifier, and you want to stop your customers from using it, maybe you've replaced it with something new, that's a feature that exists today. And that's also something that we take care of. You tell us what you want to do, and we worry about the versioning of it. Now, the other thing that I also have up there is schema. So basically, think about this as being objects and fields, okay? That's the other thing that we are now allowed to deprecate. There's a pilot. We'll talk about that towards the end. But you can, again, take away objects and fields. Now, again, those are part of your API. Did you know that? You may not have known that, but all your objects and all your fields are exposed in the Salesforce.com API automatically. You get the API for free, but you have to be concerned about that because somebody could be integrating through the Salesforce API with your objects and your fields, okay? Kind of getting my drift here? The other area that I talk about is assessing impact. We talk a lot about versioning the API. There's just changes that you're making in your app that you have to be worried about. Things like workflow. If you suddenly start sending out emails that you didn't do in the previous version, is your customer going to be happy? Maybe. Maybe not. It's a judgment call that you have to make. Remember I said a couple slides back, this is an art, not a science. It's a lot of judgment call that you as the developer have to make. Validation rules, very, very key. What if I call in via the API and I want to create your custom object? Well, if you add a new validation to that, all of a sudden my integration may break depending on what you're adding. And finally, the user interface. And I only have one line about this, but I cannot stress it enough. If you suddenly redo your UI, the customer may not be prepared for that. You have to make very conscious decisions about what you're exposing to them automatically versus what they have to kind of consume or go enable. You think about a lot of the things in Salesforce, they're features, right? You have to go enable the feature in setup and say, yes, I want to turn that on, and the UI changes. Now, like I said, today we're going to spend most of our time on that first bullet, versioning of your API. Again, Salesforce takes care of this first category automatically for you. So when you add new Apex, new fields, new objects, we automatically take care of the versioning. So it's only available in the version that you add it and forward, okay? So older versions don't get that. And you may say, well, that's kind of strange. Why does it work that way? We've learned through the years that when you add things to older versions, integrations will break. People that have written integrations, sometimes they don't expect those things to come out in older versions. So it's very important that when you're adding things, they only get added on a go-forward basis. The beauty of this is, though, the platform takes care of it all for you. Now, deprecating of Apex and Visualforce, the same thing. Once you stop distributing it, we need to keep it around for existing customers, right? If they've built an integration with your object, you can't just rip it out from under them. You got to keep it around for them. But for new customers, it's okay to stop, right? They've never integrated with it. So that's what's important about those pieces. And then versioning of behavior. So we're allowing you now, and we're giving you some tools, and we're going to walk through it, to version the behavior of your Apex, where you can say, you know, in version 1, I only want to enforce this validation. But in version 2, I want to add some additional validations. The reason you do that, we don't want the integrations to break. You're kind of catching my drift here? So let's walk through a very simple example of that first category, the category that we do automatically for you. Let's say in version 1 of your managed package, you've added this Apex class to it, you've uploaded it to the App Exchange. This is all it is, my class, my method. Now, if you notice, they're annotated as global. I hope most of you that are in this room probably know by now, if you annotate something or you mark it as global, that it's available to your customer. They can actually call this particular class and this particular method, and it's available in version 1.0. Now, let's say the customer upgrades to 2.0. You've added some additional things. So we have a new string here, string foo, and we've added a couple other methods here. We've added this my method too. Again, it's global. But if you notice, they're not available in 1.0. They're only available in 2.0 and forward. Remember I said when you add the old things to an API, they can break things. So this is what's very, very key, is that we're only adding things on a go-forward basis. Now, I want to call it this very last method here, my method 3. If you notice, there's no versioning on that, right? Your customer can't call that. It's marked as public. That means it's only internal to your application. You don't need versioning, right? You know your code. It's the customer who doesn't. So we don't have to worry about that, and that's the beauty of this piece. Now let's jump ahead, okay? Let's jump ahead to version 4.0. So in version 4.0, I actually deprecated that method there. So remember, it was available in 2.0. Now I'm taking it away. So customers can only integrate with it between 2.0 and 3.0. So let's say I install version 4.0 of your package, and that's the first time I've ever installed it. I'm not going to have access to this particular method. That's a way for you to control your footprint, to stop distribution of it. Many of you have probably seen things like this before. You can kind of see where I'm going with it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the touch points of your application. I've kind of been talking about them loosely, but I think it's important to call them out. If your customers, we're in your customers org here, they have your package installed, it has some Apex in it, maybe some Visualforce, some different pieces. You basically have 3 primary touch points. Your subscriber may write some Apex that interfaces with your application. Maybe they're calling your Apex code. Maybe they're calling your objects or your fields. I've done something to connect with your application. Well, when I connect with your application, I'm going to specify a version of your app that I'm talking to. So remember that thing that I just talked about, version 3.0. Because I was talking to that package at version 3.0, I could get access to all those methods that were exposed in that particular version. Now, what about this API? We say the subscribers API. What I'm referring to there is the Salesforce.com API. The API that many of you go create accounts in and contacts, our web services API. If you call into your package and talk to your objects or your fields, the caller has to specify a version to interface with your application in. And that's not just exclusive to your package. That's any package the customer has installed. And you may think about this. You say, Andrew, I don't go in and specify. I've done API calls all the time. I don't set anything. It just, how does that work? We've taken on this burden for you. So if you go look at the API page in setup, you'll notice down at the bottom there's some default version settings in there. And that is what applies to all API calls. Now, you can get very specific. You can call specific versions with different integration points, but there's kind of a default that comes out of the box, okay? Finally, the user interface of the customer is always the latest, okay? There's no versioning changes. So if you add triggers and you keep adding validations, it's kind of the way our app works. Those validations and things are immediately available within the user interface, but not the API, okay? You can kind of see where I'm going with this. Very, very key distinction. The user interface always runs with the latest behavior because you want them to get the latest. If you fixed a bug, you want that out there for your customer base. Now, at this point, I want to walk through a little demo, okay? So we talked about the versioning. We talked about the exposure to it, how those things are automatically versioned. But remember, I told you about that second category. I said there's a category of versioning that you have to do a little bit of work on, and that's if you want to version behavior, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this. So if you notice, I'm actually in a developer org. For those of you, I'm hoping most of you have created a managed package by now. We're looking at the managed package within the development environment. It's my Cloud Co application here. And if we look down below, I've got a couple pieces in there. I've got a very simple trigger, and I've done a Apex test to pair with it. And I've uploaded this in a couple different versions if we look down. If you notice, I've uploaded this in 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, but these particular triggers have been around since version 1.0. Now, I want us to look at the trigger as it appeared in version 1, okay? So you following me here? This is a very, very simple trigger. All this trigger is doing, it's on the account object, and it says, if the account's billing state is null, throw an error, right? One of the most basic triggers we could probably have here. And this is very simple. Think about it this way. If I'm a company and I start out maybe only participating in the U.S. market, and maybe I'm doing mail ordering or something, and I want to make sure that the billing state is always populated for my geocoding application, okay? Then it's very important to have that data within the system. That's why I added this validation. Now let's flip over to the customer's org here, okay? And I want to show you that this customer has this application installed. So if we go down here, you'll see the custom cloud app. And I've installed version 2, okay? So remember, we added some stuff in version 1.0. It's still there in 2.0. Nothing's changed. Same version, essentially. And those same validations and triggers here are down below. So I want to show you, let's actually go create an account. Let's show you that validation in action. So let's say I'm going to create maybe a GE account, and let's go ahead and leave the billing state blank. I'll click on Save. So if you notice, again, this isn't a Salesforce message. This is coming from the trigger that managed package is installed in this org, right? Pretty simple. So if I go ahead and fill in the billing state, we should bypass that validation, and we're off. And of course, it gets created. Now, this is one side of the coin. I also want to show you, this is kind of simulating the user interface. I want to simulate now an API. Let's say your customer has written an API against the account object that's actually creating them as part of another system. Well, let's do that actually using an Apex test. It's very, very similar, okay? So if we come into my Apex classes here, and I've written a little test down here called the versioning test. So I want to come in here and let's look at this code. It's very simple. And what this code is basically doing is it's creating an account, populating the billing state, and inserting it, right? This code should work today. It should work just fine with this trigger being in place. Now, the one thing I did want to call out to you, many of you may have noticed this new tab that we added up here called version settings. Now, this is a way not only for you to specify what version of the Salesforce API you're speaking with, but also what version of every installed package you're talking to. So if you notice, remember, I had version 2.0 of this package installed. I'm talking to version 2.0. This is locking me in to 2.0 of that package in terms of my integration, okay? This works in the Salesforce API. This works within Apex. Any kind of touch point that can talk to that package, we're now providing it a version of the package to speak with it at. So let's go ahead and save this. And theoretically, if I've done everything right, I should run my test, and this test should pass. And of course, as expected, it works just fine. Now, we have a problem, though. We're going to introduce version 3.0, and we're going to add some new validations. Keep in mind, we've got to keep this integration running and working today. So let's flip back over to the development environment. And I want to go actually look at the trigger that appeared in 3.0. So if we go back into my package down here, right, this is the package in the development org. We're going to pull up the trigger. And we'll click on Edit here. And I want to look at the logic here. You're going to notice it's changed a bit. Because what I did as a company, I decided, you know what? I'm not just going to sell to U.S.-based companies. I want to sell into international markets. I want to support all kinds of things. Well, some non-U.S. based addresses don't have a state, right? So we can't require a state all the time. We have to take that into consideration within our code, that if we're creating, say, something in the UK or overseas, you may not have a state, but we want a city in that case, right? So we had to adjust our validation a bit. So if you notice, the first part here is basically the validation I had before. I've added a few more things, so the billing country equals US. We'll scroll over it a little bit so you can see the rest. Or billing country equals null. Then we're going to throw that particular error. So that's kind of maintaining the behavior that we had in version 1.0. But in version 2.0, I want to start making sure that we can allow the billing state to be null if you specify a country outside the US. And that's kind of what I'm doing in the second piece here. So you'll notice I say, well, if it's not US and it's not null, but the billing city is null, I need to add a new validation. Now, of course, I could just put this out there, throw it out, have my customer install it, but what's going to be the problem? Today, the problem would be my integration would break, right? If they had an integration running against me instantly, as soon as they upgrade, it's broken. But the way that we're getting around this, if you notice this new line that we added here, is actually now allowing you, the package developer, to version your code. So as you can see here, I've actually added a one-line statement here. It says package.version.request. If it's greater than 2.0, then throw this validation error. If it's an older version, if you're calling in at 1.0 or 2.0, skip over this, right? We didn't have that at that point. And if you've got an integration that's out there today, we want to keep that integration working and functioning. This is how you version behavior of your application. So let's take a look at this. I want to actually upgrade that app in the subscribers org. So we're going to change back over to the subscriber. If you notice here, for most of you who've gone to the App Exchange, you've downloaded an app, you'll see now, this page should look familiar by now. You're in the middle of the install flow. If you notice, I'm upgrading from version 2.0 to version 3.0, where I've added that new trigger. So we're going to go ahead and click Continue through the wizard here. Now, as we walk through this, let's kind of set the stage. The user interface, remember, what did I tell you about it? It always lends its latest, right? So both of these validations should apply within the user interface. But in the API, since we're talking to it at a particular version, the behavior should maintain. And my tests that I wrote should continue to pass if I've done everything correctly here. So let's take a look at the package now that it's installed. If you'll notice, the first version I've installed was version 2.0. But of course, now we're running 3.0. So remember, first thing I want to check out is the user interface. So let's create a new account. But in this case, I'm going to change the address a bit. I'm going to leave billing state blank. But I'm going to add a country. Let's say this is in the UK. Well, if my validation that I added is working correctly, I should get an error, right? Because remember, the user interface is always running at the latest. So it's checking both of those two checks in my trigger. Now, if we scroll down and we give this a city, and click on Save again, of course, this should work. Oh, wrong field. Whew. That was close. So let's actually go into setup now. I want to take a look at that test, right? This is the moment of truth. We've got an API integration running against this customer's org. Is it going to continue to work, or did it just break? We come into our test, our versioning test that we had before. We hope this is still working. We're going to run that test. And voila, it still passes. So their integrations didn't break. It's just like Salesforce. If you've written an integration against our API, every time we upgrade Salesforce, it continues to work. Now we're giving you the same tools to do the exact same thing with your packages. We're very, very excited about this. Like I said, it's a very technical concept. I mean, you have to be pretty deep in the code. But I think your customers, as they start to grow, are going to immensely appreciate this. And it's going to differentiate the trusted cloud providers and the people who aren't. Okay? You have the trust of your customers today. This is how you maintain it. I saw a quick question. You can't. So I didn't even walk through that. But yes, we've given you some nice hooks within the testing framework to test your package as of this particular version. So when you write your Apex test, you can actually say, well, I want to run this at 1.0. Let's make sure that still passes. But I'm going to do something at 2.0. Let's make sure it behaves this way. You can kind of see. So you can do all your versioning tests within here. This is very, very cool stuff, very exciting. It's taken us a while to do this because if you can think about it, it pervades the whole platform, the APIs, Apex, Visualforce. It's a huge, huge amount of work and a huge footprint that we've done. But by building this in, hopefully it's taken the burden off you and made your life much easier. Question in the back.
Yeah, is it a best practice to decouple versions specific to their own Apex classes?
You mean to separate different classes for different versions? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, so in that, you have a method which tests for the specific execution of that
No, definitely put these all in one deal. So hopefully you shouldn't have to version behavior that often. Now, that may depend on the nature of your application. But if you look at our code base, it's the exact same way. We do this internally inside Salesforce. We write classes and we say, you know, for the majority, here's the majority of validations or the unit tests that we want to write. But in these particular cases, we need to do a small check to make sure the versioning works. So just keep it all in the same one. It makes it easier for you, right? Because you don't have to flip between versions and things. That's why we put all the hooks within Apex. Okay? One more question here. Different copies of it. This was a big debate that we had, but we did this primarily from our own learnings. This is kind of how we do it, so we don't even keep different versions around. Another reason is for performance, right? If you have, you know, if you version this every single time, you can imagine how bloated your code base becomes. And so it's very hard and taxing on the system to load up, you know, 20 versions of your class and try to worry about maintaining this. And it's also for you, right? It's kind of hard for you to look at your class and debug your code if you have to be toggling between 20 different copies of it. As long as there's one copy, you can easily step through it when you have an issue and say, oh, I get it. You know, there's this one little piece right here within it. So that was a conscious decision. It was a little debatable, but I think in the end it turned out very well. I think you'll find out. I've been playing with this for a while. It helps to kind of have it all in one. Okay? We're going to have more questions and answers at the end. I want to keep moving so we have a little bit of time because I want to get to the cool part at the very end. This is neat. I told you I got a sneak preview. So real quickly, quick recap before we close out this session or this part of the presentation. Remember, assess your impact, version your API. If you walk away with nothing else, keep those two things in your head as you're releasing new versions of your product. Remember that we also take care of some things automatically for you. The versioning of exposure of new global Apex, the deprecation of Apex, the deprecation of objects and fields. When you do that and just tell us, we take care of all the versioning for you. The only thing you have to worry about is versioning the behavior. So triggers, behavior inside your methods, things like that. UI is always the latest. Okay? Everybody with me? All right. Now you may say, we've been out for a while. Why are we talking about this now? The platform's been around for a few years, right? Many of you have had packages for a few years. We're noticing as we're talking with your customers and with many of you that your customers are starting to integrate more and more with your packages. We haven't seen that, and I've noticed an uptick in it probably in the last 9 months, that customers are starting to write their own Apex, right? They're starting to write their own API integrations. Your apps are becoming rich and mature, and they're actually wanting to integrate them with back office systems. So, and the thing is, your customers right now trust you. You are the trusted cloud provider today. So what are they doing? Many of them are taking your app and just installing it into production because they think it's, you know, everything's going to be fine. It's just going to work, just like Salesforce, right? This is part of the experience of doing cloud computing, and your customers expect that. And as they start to integrate with your app, it's going to become very, very important as we move over time. Now, if I haven't convinced you at this point how important this is, I think the next piece will. If you guys have been around for a while on the platform, and you've developed many applications and you've published it to your customers, for those of you who are new, you may not have this experience yet today. If you upload a new version of your app and you want your customers to upgrade, what you have to do is upload it to the App Exchange. You have to usually send them a little email to say, hey, guess what? I put up, version 3.0. Why don't you go to the App Exchange and download it and install it in your Salesforce environment? It works, but there's obviously a better way. It's not truly what we want to have for cloud computing, and we can do better, and that's really what this feature about, is to give you, the partners, the ability to automatically upgrade all your customers. So instead of supporting 5 different versions, you can click a button and say, deploy the next version to every single customer. This is the exciting technology we've spent literally 18 months working on. And we're going to be rolling it out in phases, but you're going to see phase 1 today, and I'm actually going to give you a demonstration of it. So we're going to flip back over. We're in a little different application, okay? This isn't the same one we're looking at. I've changed a little bit. You notice it has a few more components in it. It has a Visual Force page, an Apex class, a few pieces along the way, and it's a managed package. And I want to show you down below here. If you notice, I have a couple new lists. I have this development organizations list in here. You may not see that because you don't have it today, but we're going to talk in a second about it. If you look at the upload history down here, you can see I've uploaded my major releases, version 1.0, version 2.0. But if you notice, I have some patches now. So this is new. I can actually patch version 2.0. And what's unique about this is I'm not actually creating that patch within this development org. Remember that development organizations list I just pointed out? I actually create kind of a simple branch. So I'm creating a copy of 2.0, and I can go log in there and actually make changes to 2.0 while continuing my mainline development. Okay, so we're going to look at this in a second on a slide, but you kind of following me? You can actually upload patches to your 2.0 application, and our V1 of push upgrades is to allow you to push those patches to your customers. So how many of you have released your app, and 1 week rolls by and you get a couple calls from the customers and they say, oh my gosh, I got this critical bug, and you're like, I got to roll out a fix. Has that happened to some of you? It happens quite common. Wouldn't it be nice if you could patch your version and actually roll those changes out automatically to all your customers? Quick question. In terms of the customer? So that we'll talk a little bit about. You get basically this development org, when you spin it up, it's a copy of kind of this development org that you're in as it appeared at 2.0. It's going to be a separate org. You can log in there and release multiple patches to it. Now, to integrate the changes back, we have the force.com IDE. So you can connect to your patch development org, make your changes in there, download them with the force.com IDE. Maybe many of you are using a source control repository, and push those changes back up into your mainline or your 3.0 branch. Does that make sense? Okay. No, actually. So you are in full control. Now, we're giving you the option, but that's the beauty of this. Think about the Salesforce mentality, right? With Salesforce, customers don't get to say, I don't want Salesforce, right? I want to stay, on Winter 09 forever. They don't have that option. It automatically happens. They automatically get upgraded, and that's the same tools we're giving to you and your customer base. Now, you may not decide to run your business that way. I'm going to walk through a demo here, and I think you'll actually see you have the option and the control to exclude particular customers if you so choose. Okay? So you kind of follow me here. I've got a couple different versions, version 2.0, 2.1. You see this 2.03, and I know this is a patch by the third placement. If you notice, most of your package versions only have 2 numbers here. The third placement actually indicates that this is a patch. Okay? Now, all my application has in it here is a very simple page. It's a Visualforce page. You can kind of see here. Nothing really special about it. It tells me who the subscriber is, and it has an image on it. It's kind of, it's not very exciting. Well, if we go back in to set up here, and we're going to go back to our package. Remember, I was showing you some of those new things at the bottom. I want to show you a new button up here. See this push upgrades button? So now that I've gone and I've created that patch, I've uploaded that patch to the App Exchange, now I can deploy that patch when I'm ready to my customer base. And that's just about what we're going to do here. I want to show you my customer base. These are all my customers. It's kind of hard to see, but there are 6 different customers here. So we're logged in to 6 different orgs all on one screen here, and we're watching them real time. You can notice by the different names, we have our partner Coda, we've got Dell, we've got Stallbrex, Qualcomm. Think about these being all of your subscribers, okay? This is that Visualforce page that we just looked at. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our development org, and we're going to push out that patch update to them. So if I go to my push upgrades here, we click on that. You see I've done some previous pushes here, so I can have all the history. I can go look at the details of them. But we're actually going to schedule a new push. Now, pushes, you have options. You can do them immediately to your customers. Let's say you have a critical bug, and oh my gosh, all your customers are down. They're screaming. They're calling every hour. You want to push that out now, right? But sometimes you've got fixes that aren't that urgent. Maybe you'd rather release them on Saturday night at midnight. You have the capability to do that with this. If you notice, I'm going to go in and pick that patch version that we want to deploy, so version 2.03. Again, I've updated that Visualforce page within here. And if you notice, I can schedule it. I can say run it now or run it maybe on Saturday. And below here is that same customer base. So remember all those 6 windows that we were looking at? This is the same group right now. This is within your development organization. So you have visibility into those customers, their org IDs, and you can even see what version they're running. So if you look on the far right-hand side, they're all running version 2.0. We're going to deploy the patch to them. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these because I instantly want to upgrade them. This is a critical fix. Well, it's a much better page, but hopefully it's a critical fix. We're going to click on Schedule, which is going to run this immediately. And if you notice, now it's in progress over here. So let's flip back over to my customers. And hopefully, this demo takes about an hour to set up. So hopefully, if I've done everything appropriate, our customers are going to start upgrading instantly here. And as I showed you on that screen, if you notice, I can tick off particular customers. So maybe I only need to deploy this fix to one customer. Maybe it's got something special about them. I can pick and choose who these go to when they get deployed. Oh, we got a couple that have gone upgraded now. So you think about this. This is pretty amazing, guys. We have 3 data centers across the world, and we are instantly pushing out the next version of your package to those customers in real time. And look how fast this is. This is absolutely some of the most exciting technology that we've had probably in the packaging area in the last 2 years. I cannot tell you how pleased I am to have worked on this. And this is only the start of it. We're talking specifically about pushing out patch updates. We're going to give you the capability to push out full releases of your application. There's a few more building blocks that we have to lay in place to do that, but this is our V1. And this is actually real stuff that's coming to you in a pilot in the spring release. So I want to talk briefly, back on the presentation, about those pieces. So we have push for patch updates. That's our V1 that's going to be in pilot within the spring. It's allowing you, again, to take your main development, your 2.0 version, spin out a separate development org, or a patch development org here, into a branch, and release multiple patches from it. And then, when you're ready, you can use your own source control repository, or the Force.com IDE, or the Force.com migration tool to port your changes back into your mainline. So I know many of you have had this struggle. It's kind of 2 features here, not just the push, but you're also getting some nice branching capabilities here, which I think your development team is going to be very, very happy with. Also, I wanted to quickly highlight what is a patch. It's really bug fixes, right? This is not for releasing brand new pieces of functionality. This is to fix issues with your application. So there's a number of restrictions about how we define a patch. You'll see a lot of that when we release it in the spring. So quick recap of the spring preview. I wanted to kind of talk about that today. Push upgrades for patches coming out in a pilot. You can register. It's going to be very exciting. The branch and patch capabilities. The ability to create a second development org with your namespace on it. So many of you have struggled with that. We're taking care of that for you. Packaging of standard action overrides. How many of you have requested this? Some have? Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, a couple people. I have to tell you, believe it or not, from our ISV community, this is the #1 idea exchange idea from boats right now. This is that's why I'm so excited to get this out there. Also, how many of you had a customer who wasn't like the way you named your object, and they want to give it their own name, right? Just kind of like they rename accounts. Had a few of those? Well, guess what? That capability is coming in the spring release with our brand new translation workbench that's going to be coming out. Finally, the deprecation of objects and fields. We have that available today, and that'll still be coming in the spring release. So again, kind of in closing here as we move on to our question and answers. Cannot reiterate enough. Version your APIs, assess your impact. There's also some great guides. Remember I talked about a lot of that Apex syntax, the package.version.request that we had in that if statement. That's all in the Apex guide. You can reach that at this URL. If you search for packaging or package within it, you'll get that information back, and there's a whole topic that talks about how to do it. The other thing, if you haven't taken a look at the packaging guide, this is the quick reference guide. It actually has a whole matrix in there of all the components that you can package today on the platform, how they behave in a managed package, who can actually make changes to various things. That's one of the most common questions I've gotten at Dreamforce this time around. So make sure you check that out. There's a lot of rich content, and I almost think about it as something you want to keep right next to you as you're developing your app to make your design decisions, right? This should be your guide, and you should use it daily. Closing out with the session here, Next Steps at Dreamforce. There's a lot of resources. Hopefully this presentation will be up there. You can review it. Like I said, it's a lot of technical content, a lot of deep, rich technical things. It may take a couple times skipping through this. If you need to go back and reference or look at the demo, it'll be up there at developerforce.com/Dreamforce. Make sure you get the workbooks. If you haven't signed up for Force.com free edition in your ISV, it's a great way to kind of seed your app within customers for free from Salesforce. So definitely take a look at that. And again, feedback is going to be online this year. So at this point, I'm going to open the floor to questions. I think one of the things that's very hard with Salesforce is to keep up what we've done in the past releases. So in case you're curious what came out in the winter release, we had a lot of great functionality that came out in terms of packaging. Here's a quick list for you to kind of digest as we open it up for questions, and I'll start taking a few. It does. So you can actually decide, and what we're kind of recommending is you can say push to sandbox first. There's a way to segment your customer base within that scheduling UI. So we have a new version of it coming out in the spring release. You can actually say pull up all my sandbox customers. Let's push to them first. And then the next night, maybe I want to push to my production customers. It's up to you to kind of decide how you want to roll it out. Next question. Yes, the compiler, it all checks that. Yep. So when you have that setting on the other tab, so if you ever get something that says this thing is, not visible in this version, that's usually the culprit. Change over to the version settings, change it on the package. Next question here. The patch, is that what you're referring to? You have to do it in another development org, and the reason is that the patches, we're restricting what changes you can do within those. So, right, we don't want you putting out new objects and new fields and lots of new visual force. It's supposed to be for bug fixes. So for right now, it's scoped to that kind of change, and that's why we put it in a separate org. Also because so you can do independent development. You can keep your next release development going on while, fixing bugs that come out in your previous version. Question? So think about patches. There's still. Oh, sorry. Yes, he was asking about triggers. He was kind of saying, in the next version, I want to, I only want to fix this trigger. Is that, all I need to have available to it within the package, right? Yeah. So he's saying he's got one trigger within the package. That's all that's broken. He's got all these other things. How does he fix that one trigger only? Well, when we spin off that patch org for you, it's a complete copy of your package. So there's no work on your part. When that org gets created, it has your package in it. It's in development as it appeared as of the version that you're patching. So think about it this way. You go in and you tweak that trigger. You're still uploading a full copy of your package. But when you do the upgrade on your customers, the only thing that's going to change for them is that one trigger. So here's what we're doing. Remember, when you upload a major release, he's asking, how do we know, he's done changes since then, so how is that going to be taken into consideration with inside the patchwork? So remember, when you upload your package, we're taking a snapshot of it, right? So when we spin up this patch development organization, we're taking that snapshot as it appeared as of 2.0 and putting it in there. So changes that you've done later, we don't know about them. Okay? Other questions? One in the back. Yes. Where's the UI? So his question was about the user interface and, where does that kind of stop? I always said it's at the latest and what's user interface and what's not. The best way to think about it is triggers. It's also your visual force, right? So we didn't walk through any. There's not really a way to version a visual force page. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this regard. If you make a change to visual force and you push that out there, it's instantly going to be available to your customers. You probably want it that way. Now, maybe there's some features within your page that you don't want to automatically expose to them. If you look at the way Salesforce does this, we actually treat it as a feature, an option that you go turn on within your setup area. You should probably try to do the same thing with your UI. So it's not just the standard Salesforce UI, it's also your visual force. But anything, the stuff that is not the latest are things like an API integration, Apex code that's talking to it. If the customer writes a visual force page atop your own Apex code, that is considered an integration touch point, right? We don't want to break their page because suddenly you start changing stuff on your Apex controller. Make sense? Any other questions? Nope, another one down here. Right, so you can only, keep in mind, we're only allowing you to push patches. So if your customer wants to upgrade, his question was about kind of jumping versions in a way. If you're, right, so remember I told you this is V1 of push, and so we're basically allowing you to push patches. So when your customer wants to go from version 2.0 and they want to jump to 3.0, they're still going to have to install that, right? That's a major release. You've added brand new functionality, and they need to kind of consume that at this point. Now, eventually, we're going to allow you to push those types of changes. But for this, all we're doing is saying at version 2.0, you can do patches to customers that have that particular version installed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my question was more on the lines of, say you have your 6 customers, 5 of them have gone through or at least downloaded 3.0, but you still got 1 customer that never downloaded the package, but you already want to have a patch for 3.0.
You can continue. So one thing with his question is you kind of get a staggered base, right? You get customers on 2.0 and 2.0.1, and you've got customers on 3.0 and maybe a 3.0.1, and you want to create a patch. You actually get 1 patch development org per major release. So you can have a 2.0. Remember, we're creating a branch. So you get a patch development org for your 2.0 branch. You get another patch development org for your 3.0 branch. So your customer that's still at 2, he may stay there for a while at this point. It's up to him to upgrade from 2.0 to 3.0. But you can keep moving forward. You have a way to patch him, and you have another way to patch all your customers off of 3.0, and they're independent development organizations. Does that make sense? The 2.0, yeah, so we only show you people that are eligible to receive the upgrades. So if you notice on that screen I had you pick which patch you want to push out. We filter out everybody who's not eligible, if that makes sense. Another question over here. There is not a plan at this point because we don't have a way to automatically upgrade unmanaged. So unmanaged is kind of, the way we kind of look at it, it's a template. It's a way to get some template code and Apex and objects model into the customer's org, and then they can customize it. So we can't seamlessly upgrade that without knowing what the customer's done to it. So managed packages, this is really only exclusive to it because those are the only things that we support upgrading on today. Another question I saw. Is there another one? Oh, one here. So are you his question was about, releasing code from sandbox to test to production. Now, is this within the customer's org that you're doing this, the sandbox? In your own org? So for that model, there's not a way to do it because you have control of the whole picture, right? You have control of the integrations because you're building them within your own organization. So the versioning is not necessarily as important. You can do some of this, but a lot of the stuff that I showed you, like the behavior versioning, things like that, you can't really do that. You don't have a touch point. You're not using a package. You're just kind of rolling code from production to sandbox. And most people know kind of what their integration points are so they can plan for those types of changes. It's an interesting idea. Honestly, I hadn't thought about that. But yes. So you wanted to script a way. I think maybe the feature that might be better suited for you is a way to schedule. Have you seen the change sets feature, the cloud deploy? It's another name for it. So basically, it's a way to roll changes from sandbox to production. Now, right now, you still have to be there Friday night to click the button. But if there was a scheduling feature within that, you could do exactly what we're showing you here, and it sounds like that's probably the best fit. So I'll take that away and talk to the product manager that's working on that. Another question while we're here. We got about 2 minutes. Install scripts. So you will see install scripts probably sooner rather than later. The creation of data may be a little bit farther out on the roadmap at this point. What you can do, though, if you can write your own script, You can create your own data with it. So if you want to seed a few records, it's easy to write an Apex script that would create all that data. So I think you'll see that sometime, hopefully in the first half, safe harbor of next year, if we can work this out. So he's asking about packaging of workflow and some of these things. Now, which one can you not package today that you're interested in? Because you can package workflow. Time-based trigger on the workflow. Yes. I completely agree with you. So that one, we don't have it specifically slated in the roadmap, but I think that's, something I'm going to take back, and it seems easy, it makes sense. I think it should be there. I agree with you completely. Any other questions? Yep, one more over here. Five dev orgs, and that's, yep. So think about the dev org and what we're moving towards long term, you'll see in the next year, is dev orgs are kind of a workspace, right? They just, they're a version that you're working in, so eventually, maybe you want to work on multiple versions, the patches that I showed you. You can obviously have different development orgs for those various workspaces. And we're going to hopefully give you some features to kind of switch between those a little bit more easily in the future here. All right? And thank you guys for coming. We're out of time. If you have any other questions, please feel free to come up and see me. Thanks again.